Thanks for listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast. Do remember you can subscribe to Farmers Weekly magazine and get all the latest news, views and market prices by visiting fwi.co.uk.
It's very, very sad. She's been so open to engage with us as farmers and try to put things right where they maybe haven't worked for us. And through that cooperation, it's led to a far better set of standards than we ever have had before in the past, where we were just given the rules and told to get on with it.
Farmers say top civil servant Janet Hughes will be a hard act to follow after she decides to move on from Defra. How a new agreement between London and Brussels will make life easier on your farm is a revolving door at the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, and Louise says she really can taste the difference when it comes to bread made from regenerative wheat. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh. Broom.
All that and more coming up, but first, livestock leaders in Scotland have criticised a climate change report saying meat production must be curtailed so we can meet net zero targets. The Climate Change Committee says the Scottish Government must support a shift in average meat and dairy consumption towards lower carbon foods. Not so, says Kate Rowell from Quality Meat Scotland, who argues that the committee's recommendation is based on flawed evidence.
Our most serious concern is that they haven't really thought about the food security of Scotland or indeed the wider UK. And it's a time when protein is lacking right around the world, and we need to be able to provide that protein for ourselves. And I mean, in Scotland, we can produce it very sustainably, and it also helps our economy and our rural communities. So this is something that they really haven't taken into consideration at all when they've made this carbon budget.
I mean, you're saying they're out of touch with societal needs and grossly undermining the powerful multi-benefits of agriculture in relation to stuff like food security, health, nature and economy, the whole lot. I mean, what do you think the answer is here in terms of what they're suggesting?
So, I mean, we fundamentally disagree with their modelling. You know, they are saying that meat consumption has already fallen quite significantly in this country. But when you look at Defra's balance sheets, that would appear to contradict what they're saying. So, you know, we believe that people as a whole really recognise the benefits of eating red meat as part of a healthy, balanced diet. They want to continue eating red meat. Our most recent consumer research has shown that 90% of people would buy Scottish beef, lamb or pork, even if the alternative imported was 30% cheaper. So people really do want to buy local. They want to support our local farmers and their local economy. And the carbon budget that the Climate Change Committee have produced doesn't really recognise this in any way. And the worry is that people do continue eating red meat, but we just offshore our emissions. And how does that help anybody? Because we're not fixing the world if all we do is bring it in from other countries.
That's Kate Rowell from QMS, Quality Meat Scotland, on the latest from the Climate Change Committee and its carbon budget recommendations for Scotland. Hugh, beef under the cosh again, certainly in the firing line.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, Scottish Government, their interpretation of the Climate Change Committee's seventh carbon budget, which was, of course, published earlier in the year. I mean, they've upped the reduction levels. And there's two things to note about the latest Climate Change Committee report. One is that their recommendation for the reduction in red meat has slightly increased. But what they have said is that they're open to offers if someone comes along with evidence which suggests otherwise, which previously, the previous ones were saying, you need to cut all red meat out, it's terrible, da-da-da-da. And now they're saying, well, yeah, we need to speed this up because they've got to speed everything up, not just beef, all emissions to hit the target they want to get by 2050. But if you come up with a great idea or prove that cows aren't as bad as we have been led down the path to think they are, then let us know type thing. So they're doing that. There's a slightly more there's a slightly more open door there than there was previously. However, yes, they're still chasing these reductions in red meat consumption because that's how they fear they're going to get through, or how they think they're going to get through the climate change or get to target of net zero. Look, it's no surprise that the chair of QMS in Scotland, fair play to her, she's coming out and saying she's defending it, saying absolutely this is a joke. And she's right. We might like to see our red chair in England come out and say, a red meat chair come out and say the same thing. And likewise, the Welsh chair come out and say the same thing as well, because it's not just about the beef industry taking the scapegoat for the rest of society just so they can carry on going on holiday and buying rubbish off Amazon.
Yeah, long-haul flights and internet shopping both have very, very high carbon footprints. A little bit more difficult, though, to persuade the wider general public to give them up. So focusing on farmers here, Louise, NFU Scotland, though, saying that agriculture, that farming, meat production mustn't be the carbon sink for the whole of the UK.
I think that's a very fair point. Why should one area carry the can for everywhere else? It's not right. And I think another point about this is that I don't know whether this report has acknowledged the progress that is being made on a daily basis. Emissions reduction is happening on most farms in the country, and I'm not really sure if they've acknowledged that. I know that Kate mentioned she felt that some of the evidence is flawed, and that's a really interesting point and a strong point to make. We all know that there's a role for animals, whatever sort of animal they are, in the right place. So is this just a case of a low-hanging fruit and it's an easy target? I'm not sure.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And now a special shout out and message from this week's sponsor of the Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Harvester Parts Limited, your partner for spares and replacement parts.
When you're battling against a breakdown at the busiest time of year, the most important thing to be is ahead of the game.
Make sure your kit is in working order so you're ready to roll when you're up against it.
And when the stuff does go wrong, because it always does, make sure you've got a reliable partner who can get the right part to you next day.
For spare parts for all major manufacturers, call the team at Harvester Parts on 07774 273 822. That's 07774 273 822.
Or simply visit www.harvesterpartslimited.co.uk. That's harvesterpartsltd.co.uk for a calmer, more productive harvest.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, an agreement between London and Brussels could pave the way for smoother trade and travel between the UK and European Union. The phytosanitary agreement or veterinary agreement could also make it easier to import and export plant protection products and perishable food items such as seafood and meat. Here's Ed Barker of the Agricultural Industries Confederation to explain what exactly is going on.
The government's been quite clear that it wants to minimise the paperwork that is required in order for those export processes to take place. And that's where a lot of the cause of delays have come from. You obviously have things like fresh produce, and that's particularly focused around the southeast of England. But you have goods all around the country in seafood, in plant products, and the delays that we've seen in the logistics sectors, they were obviously very pronounced after EU exit, and the supply chain has really been in a managed position for the last 3 or 4 years, where they've kind of accepted the situation, but at a great cost. And so what we're seeing now is hopefully going to remove a lot of not just costs, but the time delays that have added so much costs in supply chains.
And taking the politics out of it for a moment, this seems like a sensible and grown-up solution from an economic point of view. It's good for business, good for farmers.
Yes, I mean, on balance, we look across the whole of the AIC membership, for example, seeds, animal feeds, grain trading, etc., crop protection, and on balance, it's beneficial for businesses. I think what we do have to be very clear on is that whilst it will make, hopefully, the trade of goods much easier by removing certificates that are necessary, there are inevitable trade-offs. We have heard a lot about dynamic alignment, which are the words that come up time and time again. And what we understand is that will cede a number of decision-making procedures back to the European Union again. And we have to be very clear about what this trade-off means.
And what does it mean? I mean, there's got to be a mutual benefit here. It's not going to see the UK becoming, for want of a better phrase, a rule taker.
No, and it is quite interesting that the UK will be in the tent, if you like, when it comes to a lot of the information sharing, data sharing that it's been cut out of for the last 4 or 5 years. So rapid alerts on food and feed, what's known as SCOPAV committees, things like that. So it will be in a more privileged position than other third countries in being within the tent, but obviously it doesn't have a final say on a lot of these. What we are trying to just understand is, can the UK still use its influence, which we know it certainly had during its membership of the European Union, in order to provide evidence, data on real world issues facing not just farmers, but agronomic issues. And that will be a real test. I think cynics might say we're not going to have any involvement at all and it's lip service, but the fact that we will have access to a number of databases and agencies as the UK, it is significant.
We spoke briefly at the beginning of this conversation about perishable goods, I guess food exports, seafood, etc., going from the UK to Europe. This is also going to have a benefit in terms of stuff coming onto farm, as you said, sort of crop protection products, feed, things like that.
Yes, that's one thing we're really interested in. When you implement barriers to trade in either direction, it inevitably impacts the whole cycle of trade for getting products onto farm. So what that means is seed is a really good example. We've really struggled with the fact that oilseed, for example, has been considered high risk on imports, and it's delayed imports coming into GB quite significantly, and that impacts getting it onto farm, but also into trials as well. What's interesting about crop protection is that what we anticipate is that we won't have our own duplicate system anymore, which means that if the product's approved in the EU, then in theory, so too will it be approved in GB. And that will speed up the process of having those products available to us. A challenge that we've had historically is that for minor use crops and even crops that maybe aren't cereals, those manufacturers, those producers placing it on the market have got to take a view as to whether or not GB was a big enough market to supply. Whereas now that we're sharing that whole market with the European Union, that does make the access to those goods much easier. Same for animal feeds as well. A lot of animal feed products contain animal products, milk powders, gelatin, things like that, feed additives. And by streamlining the processes with the EU, it should make it much easier to access them and ultimately have them on farm.
And how quickly do you think farmers will start to notice a difference?
It's a good question. To be honest, if you said to me back in July time that we would be at the position we've already reached with the European Union by May, I wouldn't have believed you. So the next steps in terms of implementation could be much quicker than many had anticipated. Also, the agreement is quite all-encompassing. There aren't that many caveats and exemptions that have been put in place. There are some, like gene editing, for example. However, we've been told to look at a 2026 implementation. When in 2026, certainly the earlier part, but that's when it could happen. But inevitably, as the negotiations go on, that could be later. But certainly, the ambition is to get it implemented as quickly as is possible, but noting the necessary implementation issues that will come in. For example, we have goods on the market in GB that aren't permitted for use in the EU, for example, across a number of different sectors. What happens with those? So there will be a number of outstanding questions that inevitably the European Union will want a resolution to.
That's Ed Barker from the AIC explaining all about the latest agreement between London and Brussels. So this framework is going to streamline the export process for UK agricultural products, particularly meat, dairy, and other goods. Sausages, as the mainstream media have said. Hugh.
Yeah, they seem to focus on sausages. All the people that don't like Europe are saying, "Oh, but Europe doesn't eat sausages, so it's no good. It's pointless." It's not pointless. Just forget the politics, okay? Let's take the "we love Europe, the pro and the anti-Brexit." Let's take that out of it. Just look at the practicalities of it. So, for example, on lamb, half the sheep meat we produce in this country, we send across into Europe, okay? And the vast chunk of that, big chunk of that, goes into France, goes into Rungis, into the market south of Paris, and then it goes out to wholesalers and butcher shops and restaurants. Why? I don't know, because the French don't like farming sheep. They've got less than 5 million ewes, 2.5 times the land area. We've got 16 million ewes and a lot less land. Perhaps we just love farming sheep more than them. Anyway, that goes over there. Now, before Brexit, obviously, we put 1,000 carcasses on a wagon, off they went, job done, no problems. Now, you've got lamb factories. I was talking to one factory owner before Christmas, and he pretty much employs a full-time person to do the paperwork, to do the checks, to do the health documents, health certification documents. Because it's just one type of lamb, it's a carcass, you just need one set of certificates. Bear in mind, every different type of meat, so if it was lamb livers, lamb whatevers, you'd have to have a different certification for each type. He's got someone full-time on the paperwork, and he says he still lives in fear that he gets the 2 o'clock in the morning phone call from French customs to say, "Monsieur, the comma is in the wrong place. We're going to condemn you 200 grand wagon load of lambs," or whatever. So it's been causing utter chaos. It's just been adding cost. So if we can take that out of the mix, fantastic. I get, though, the people are upset about the fisheries, and I get the fishermen are upset about it. And it's a really tricky one, though, isn't it? Because if you I looked up the numbers on the fishing total yield in terms of value to the UK is about 1.1 billion. That lamb job just alone was 586 million last year. So it's like, it's a really tricky one. But then on the other bit on the fishing side, so obviously the anti-Europe lot pick up, this is an affront to our fisheries and our nation, bring back Dunkirk, yada, yada, yada. But the flip side of that, there's a whole load of guys caught up in the Brexit storm that were exporting shellfish that were completely banned because there was no SPS, there was no agreement for getting that across the water. So that market will potentially become easier and come back. So like everything, Johann, there's pros and cons, isn't it? But I think this is probably a sensible route to go down, as much as some people may feel that they've been shortchanged by it.
And Louise, plant-based imports, exports, trade benefit too. Potatoes, I mean, they don't really make the same sort of headlines as sausages, but seed potatoes have been a real bone of contention in recent years since Brexit. So there are benefits there as well.
Oh, there are definitely benefits. And actually, you can see the list of organisations that have welcomed this deal. It tells you really what you need to know in terms of it, as Hugh was pointing out, completely simplified the process for them, hopefully will take out cost and bureaucracy, and the whole thing will be a lot smoother. I think the question, and one that a lot of arable farmers are asking, and we need to know more about, is how fully aligned are we going to be to EU rules? Because there is still, I think, quite a lot of detail to come. The obvious thing that they've been discussing, and I think that this has been in the media quite a bit, is gene editing, because clearly we are further down the line with that and with our legislation. Now, I think they are going to treat that as an exception, and we will carry on with our gene editing progress. I believe that's the case. But actually, the other thing that people are asking about is agrochemicals, which is not very surprising, because we were, obviously, when we were still in the EU, losing products hand over fist, and we couldn't do anything about that. Now, if we sort of fully aligned to that, then there may be some difficulties. And the subject of glyphosate has been brought up a couple of times. And this sort of pre-harvest use of glyphosate, I think, needs clarifying. At the moment, obviously, we can't use it as a desiccant, but we can use it for weed control purposes pre-harvest. And you could argue, well, what's the difference? So if the EU is different on that, and I'm not sure that they are, but we'll have to find out a bit more about that. But if they're different on that, and then we are fully aligned, and that's going to cause some problems. And obviously, the further north you go in this country, the bigger problem it'll be. So, we just have to wait for this detail and see what it brings, really.
There is still a lot of detail that will have to be scrutinised as a part of this announcement, this negotiation. Hugh, the NFU saying it's crucial that it does not compromise various things, and that any dynamic alignment, as Louise says, this idea that the UK is going to adopt relevant EU legislation into our own regulatory standards going forward on things like crop protection, pesticides, it's got to be mutually advantageous. This has got to be a two-way thing. This is not going to be the UK being a rule taker. It's going to have advantages for us as well as the EU.
Yeah, look, some people are saying, look, we're becoming a rule taker, but then equally, if you think about it, they're our biggest customer, right? So I think the big difference with this agreement that's been signed or is being agreed is that we're back in the room again. Now, that will alarm some people, I get that, but equally, it's probably a better place to be in the room, having a say or having some impression on standards and where we go than being out altogether. So I think we're in a better place just because they're our biggest partner and that stuff is there. It's got to be a good thing because it will take cost out the chain. And it's back to the whole thing. The final thing, it's like everyone that was for or against Europe is fighting away in the corner and it's been going on for years. And then on the other side of the room, there are all these people running really successful businesses that are they're the kingpin of our economy, of our supply chain, of everything else. All these people just getting on with business. And everyone's just completely ignored everything they've said. And so they will be feeling pretty happy now that some of this red tape is going and they can get back to what they were doing, which is concentrating on just doing business and just getting on with it, trying to make some money and pay off some of this national debt, et cetera, as opposed to just talking and pretending that we're all going to live like it's 1972 again, which is just nonsense.
You know, the irony is that this is very similar to what Theresa May proposed back in 2017. And of course, at the time, Starmer voted against it. So what a waste of all those years.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Arable farming made easy with Avant. Transform your operations with our powerful, versatile loaders. With over 200 attachments, Avant loaders help boost productivity. Watch your yields grow. Search for Avant now.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us podcast@fwi.co.uk, and if you're in the UK itself, you can also message us by texting the word farm followed by your message to 88440. Louise, a busy week for you. You've been out and about a lot.
Yes, I've been out and about quite a bit this week. Interesting day yesterday. I went to the Green Farm Collective open day down at Overbury near Tewkesbury. Had a packed agenda, full room. So we were looking at and talking about all sorts of things, you know, healthy soils leading to healthy people. So quite a nutrition link coming through. We even did a live bread tasting, which was all about whether humans can actually pick out and prefer the food that is better for them.
And did they?
Well, that was really good question, Hugh, because actually the loaf of bread that was the clear winner was actually one that was baked by Tim Parton, who is one of the founders of the Green Farm Collective, and he had made that bread from the regenerative flour that the Green Farm Collective now sell and have produced and is now sold by Eurostar Commodities. So that was really interesting. That was the outright winner by a long way.
And that was purely on the taste.
Yeah, we didn't know. There were 4 different breads that we tasted, and then we just had to rank them, and then we just had to give a reason, if we could, why we preferred something or maybe what we didn't like about some of them. And it's quite difficult to do, actually, eating 4 bits of different bread, in quite quick succession. But Tim's loaf won very easily.
And they're also going great guns on regenerative wool. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's early days, but they are going to hopefully they've teamed up with Woven Beyond and Advantage Fibres, and they are going to produce regenerative British wool, which we were told is a first. It will have the Green Farm Collective logo on it. And the people who they are working with say it's really quite important that some of these brands that they're talking to, they do want a story. And as we both know, there's good stories behind some of these farms. So what they're needing at the moment is 10 tons of white clean wool. So that's going to be produced. I don't quite know what you do with 10 tons of white clean wool. Already short, but then they have already got a manufacturer that is interested in that and is really big into the whole sustainability story.
So what exactly makes it regenerative wool?
Well, that's a good question, Hugh. And as I said, it is early days, but they will have it. They will have a certification system for this, just like they do. It's independently verified that the flour that they produce. So they are working with people to set that up. And, as I said, it's not going to happen just overnight, but that is the next product, if you like, that'll come from Green Farm Collective members.
And Hugh, you've been out spraying maize this week.
Spraying maize. Yeah, we've been turning grassland into maize land, and always amazed by the fact that perfectly rectangle fields drilled by the maize drilling tractor, which is a lovely contractor that comes in and does it for us. But what always amazes me is then when I go out to put the preems on, and I'm thinking, this is a really perfect rectangle field. So it's a really simple A-B line down one side, and then we can optimize by going all the way across the mainland work and then 2 short headlands either end of the rectangle. And I drive into the field with a spray, and there's the headland. And then obviously the computer said, no, don't like that. So I'm going to do it at 45 degrees, like a beautiful pattern work across the field. So, which is fine when you're doing the preempts. But then when you come into, if you have, I'll put a leaf, a plant, nutrient on the leaf at some point, and it'll just be a nightmare. All the short work from these silly angles. But anyway, that's the joy of modern technology and operators that obviously never actually have to spray a crop. They just drill it. Other than that, it's been we had a tiny bit of rain, which is better than nothing. I think some other parts of the country had more rain. Other parts of the country were tantalised and teased a bit like us, but there might be some more rain coming. It's not all lost yet, but steady away, really. It's not too bad a week.
Louise, from the Green Farm Collective, you've been to Nature Friendly Farming Week.
I have. I've been out to Martin Lyons' farm today. Nature Friendly Farming Week taking place all week on all sorts of farms, lots of different activities done. But actually, we were out there and it was an IPM session. So we were actually out there collecting beetles, believe it or not. So it was with Kelly Jowett of Rothamsted, who really knows her stuff when it comes to beetles and carabid beetles in particular. So, goodness me, 2 days, a 2 days catch of beetles. There were a lot of them in there. So something's obviously working well on that farm. Interesting to me, they found more beetles in a trap in the crop than they did in the margins. So I don't think most of us were expecting that. We were expecting that they'd all be sheltered in the grassland.
What was the crop?
We did that in both winter beans and in spring barley. So that was really interesting because, of course, there's an awful lot of time and effort gone into establishing all this stuff around the edge of fields for these beneficials. But it may just be the time of year they're out there.
And then they could be the launch pad. But then the bits around the outside that we go into, as you say, spend lots of time establishing the margins are the launch pad for those populations, so they can then go into the crop, presumably.
Well, there is that, and obviously different parts of the life cycle they need different things. So the answer is you need a whole diversity of habitat, don't you? And then you're keeping everything happy.
And we all need a little bit of happiness, don't we, Louise? Hugh, the markets, are they keeping you happy?
Thank you very much, Johann. Finished their deadweight this week, drops back about 10p on the week, 687.9. The live weight, 372.1, drops back 2p. Moving on to sheep, SQQ deadweight, 665.4. That is back about 8p on the week. The live weight, SQQ, 352.9. As ever, that's gone up as the others dropped down. So that's gone up about 40p on the week. Pig price, SPP, actually nudged up this week. Some good news, and it's gone up by sort of almost more than, actually not quite a 0.9 of a penny. It's 206.2. It's gone up this week, so that's a positive move in the world of pigs. To the arable markets, not so positive. Feed wheat almost stands on it. Well, it's dropped 10p a tonne based on the week. It's £160 dead this week, feed wheat. Milling wheat, £178. That's dropped back £4 on the week. Feed barley drops back a massive 30p to £149.50 on the week. Oilseed rape's actually gone up by about £3 to £430.10. Feed peas stand on at 209.50. Feed beans stand on at 219.10. And if you are filling tractors up with diesel this week, you should be paying about 63.06 pence per litre of your diesel. That's actually dropped back nearly a penny on the week. And judging by the oil price crash today, hopefully by next week, it'll have dropped back a bit more.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, Defra is losing one of its most popular civil servants after Janet Hughes announced she's moving to pastures new. As Defra's Farming and Countryside Director, Janet's been instrumental in creating the Sustainable Farming Incentive, the government's flagship agri-environment scheme for England. Her willingness to work closely with farmers to ensure the scheme meets their needs has won her plaudits from growers and livestock producers. In fact, here at Farmers Weekly, we named Janet as one of 10 game changers for her groundbreaking approach to implementing government policy. But all good things must come to an end, and she's moving on to become Director General of Civil Service Reform and Efficiency in the Cabinet Office. Yorkshire farmer Angus Galthorpe says she'll be a hard act to follow.
It's very, very sad. She's been so open to engage with us as farmers and try to put things right where they maybe haven't worked for us and the schemes. And through that cooperation, it's led to a far better set of standards with the SFI, etc., than we ever have had before in the past, where we were just given the rules and told to get on with it, whether they fitted with our systems or not. We just had to make the best of a bad job with them. Hopefully that groundwork that Janet has started and really put her life and soul into will be continued, but we do have to question whether whoever replaces her is open to that same cooperative discussion.
Yorkshire farmer Angus Galthorpe there on the departure of top civil servant Janet Hughes from Defra. Other tributes flowing in, including from the National Sheep Association and indeed the Tenant Farmers Association. Louise, Janet Hughes is going to be missed, isn't she?
Oh, she's going to be really missed. I mean, farmers are very sad to see her move on. She genuinely brought a change of approach to how things were done, and she really did have a desire to understand why something wasn't working or wouldn't work at the farm level. So, there was lots of engagement, lots of consultation. And, there was this whole shift really with the policy to incentivising behaviour rather than this, 2 metres from the centre of the hedge approach that we had before. So, yeah, they're going to really miss her and the years that she put into it, I suppose. I mean, who could forget her performance on the stage at the Big Top at Groundswell, where, she really had the energy and the passion and the commitment for the job that she was doing.
Yeah, highly unusual for a top civil servant to engage so much with the industry and being willing to work with the industry, with growers and livestock producers to formulate government policies which work for them as well as for Defra and indeed for taxpayers too. So much so that we named Janet as a Farmers Weekly game changer last year for that open and forward-looking approach. Where do you think that leaves, though, the future for the sustainable farming incentive? It's very much, as a policy, the SFI been Janet's baby. She's been so involved with it, and yet she's not going to be there going forward.
Well, it has been, and she does have obviously very capable people working with her in that department. So hopefully not all that expertise is going to be lost. The flexibility of these schemes was welcomed so much by the farming community. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I bumped into Janet at a conference up in Norfolk, and she said to me that she was enjoying reading the articles that I was writing about the sustainable farming incentive. And I said back to her, Janet, it would be really useful if I could ring you and just talk through some of the stuff before I write it, before it goes to print. And she said, no, I don't want you to do that. I'm interested to see how farmers are interpreting it and how they're putting it into practice. She said it would spoil it if I then said this is how they're supposed to do it. And actually she was right, because that was the whole basis behind these schemes. No one was being forced to do anything. You were being allowed to decide whether it was right for your farm and whether it was worth putting a grass margin in next to a hedge or something, whether that was worth more than using that bit of land for food production. So that was really interesting to me.
And Hugh, we had Janet on the podcast a couple of years ago. I remember you interviewing her, sat on a couple of bales at Groundswell.
Yeah, we did. And look, fair play. Janet is amazing in the sense that, before no civil servant had sort of stood up to the plate and said, actually, I'm going to defend what I'm here to do and get out there and engage. And she has been groundbreaking in that sense compared to, if it had been done previously, it had been done very low profile in a different way to her. She was very upfront with it. Look, there will be people that will blame her for various things going wrong as well, rightly or wrongly. I just hope Defra have learned some of the lessons, and as we say all the time, and keep moving this on, and let's get this policy thing resolved as quickly as we can, because everyone's still left in the lurch. And we're no further forward, and there she is. Some will say, well, she's just deserting the sinking ship to go off and do another civil service job. It's the example of the blob in action. The blob always takes care of itself. But no, genuinely, good luck to her, because I think she was great in terms of what she did and the way she fronted up. The policy decisions and the outcomes on the ground may not have been amazing for some people. For some people, they have been amazing. But the challenge now, moving on, is to get someone into that role that can really kick this on. Because, at the moment, it's just withering and going nowhere fast, isn't it?
Well, Hugh, Janet Hughes isn't the only mover and shaker moving and shaking the UK agriculture sector this week. Two big announcements from the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. In a surprise move, AHDB Chief Executive Graham Wilkinson is standing down. We'll pick the bones out of that one in a moment. First, though, the appointment of Norfolk farmer and strategic advisor Emily Norton as AHDB chair, starting next month. In recent years, Emily Norton's carved something of a niche for herself as an outspoken columnist for Farmers Weekly. She will, of course, be putting a pen down and giving that up. But who better to tell us what we can expect when Emily takes up the reins as AHDB chair than Farmers Weekly editor Andrew Meredith?
Well, Emily's background, main principal job she's previously known for was as head of research at Savills, the property and land management company, where she carved out quite a reputation there as one of the early experts on all things carbon, biodiversity, and, principally those new funding streams that there were great hopes and are still great hopes for a new cash for farmers. And she helped Savills become one of the early leading advisors on that topic. And then she left the firm, I would say, a couple of years ago now, and has been working in various freelance capacities, as well as writing brilliant and pithy articles for the Farmers Weekly opinion section, as you say.
Andrew, some people have praised Emily's appointment, welcomed it, in fact. Others a little bit more surprised, some even nervous. Among them, former AHDB Cereals and Oilseeds chairman Paul Temple, who said it makes him nervous for the future of the AHDB, which he feels should be focused more on food production. Indeed, he's described Emily as a cheerleader for regenerative agriculture. How does Emily get the balance right?
When you look at AHDB, it is an uncomfortable alliance in some ways of all of the different enterprises and sectors that it represents. So any one person will struggle to be seen as a unifying candidate across all of those different fields. But the one thing that is important to all of the different enterprises is environmental payments and pivoting away from these area payments and towards that support if the farmers choose to take it up. So I think this is a really strong nod to that reality that the government certainly sees that it's important to have someone like Emily at the helm because she can help propel farmers into that future. But for every one farmer that she pulls along with her, her job will be to hopefully not let go of another farmer that is sceptical that this is perhaps her only priority. And now she is a farmer in her own right, and she's been immersed in the industry for all of her professional career. She does have a very good understanding of normal food production as well.
Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, Andrew. If we look at Emily's predecessor, Nicholas Sapphire, very, very strong when it comes to commercial experience. Emily lacks that in-depth commercial experience, but her strength is policy. She understands the policy. She understands the politics. She's very, very well connected politically.
Yes. She's got good contacts on both sides of the political divide, I would say. So, and this is a political appointment after all. The AHDB chair is a role that has to be signed off by the Defra secretary of the day. So it's clear that they feel she's up to the job. And of course, now, once she's in post from the 1st of June, it will be for farmers to decide whether they agree thereafter. But it'll be very interesting to see what she feels the role of AHDB is.
Yeah, particularly with the announcement within 24 hours of Emily Norton's appointment that AHDB Chief Executive Graham Wilkinson is going to leave the organisation towards the end of this year, only 18 months or so after taking up the role himself.
Yes, I had a senior AHDB official on the phone this morning at pains to try and stress that this is an unfortunate colliding of two different timelines. And it's certainly not that Mr. Wilkinson has thrown his toys out of the pram and stormed off because of this appointment. So, that's their story. They're sticking to it. Got no reason to disbelieve that narrative at the moment. He's off to a major global food processor. So there'll be a period of months now until nearly the end of the year, as I understand it, where they will be working together. But obviously, I'd imagine the search for his replacement will start relatively quickly.
Farmers Weekly editor Andrew Meredith there on the appointment of Emily Norton as chair of the AHDB. Louise, like Farmers Weekly, I guess, the AHDB is a broad church. It represents lots of different sectors, often in competition with one another. Emily Norton, Norfolk farmer, going to have a work cut out when it comes to being that unifying force and finding a way forward in terms of chairing the AHDB board. Not going to be an easy job.
No, it isn't, and I'm sure she's looking forward to it. I'm sure she's got plenty of fresh ideas. As you say, it's just getting everybody pulling together, which it is never an easy thing to do. Emily has never shied away from confronting the industry, so it is obviously an appointment that has raised eyebrows, and people are, I think, already wondering what on earth is coming their way. But yeah, there's a lot of change going on, isn't there? So she can be part of that, hopefully.
Well, yeah, you say confronting the industry, Louise. Emily's certainly not been afraid of calling out the industry when she thinks we've got things wrong, which takes me back to a webinar that we did at Farmers Weekly about 5 years ago, looking at farming after Brexit. The entire panel of experts, we had 5 experts on that webinar panel. They were all men, men of a certain age, almost, shall we say. And Emily took to social media to accuse us at Farmers Weekly of being male, pale and stale. And to be fair, she absolutely had a point with our lack of diversity on that occasion. But interestingly, one of those panellists was Will Jackson, who was and still is AHDB Chief Strategy Officer. And Will, I think, was about 37 at the time, and he replied to Emily's message saying that he was stung by her suggestion that he was stale by any means. So it'll be interesting to see how Will and Emily get along, with them both now at the AHDB and working together. I'm sure it will all be fine. Hugh, moving on slightly, AHDB Chief Executive Graham Wilkinson, though, announcing that he is moving on just 24 hours after Emily's appointment. Farmers Weekly editor Andrew Meredith, as you heard in the audio, saying that that decision to leave, nothing to do with Emily's arrival.
Well, look, they're clearly not related, because you don't just suddenly go, oh, she's been appointed, and then within a week go and rustle up a really high level job in the supply chain. So that was obviously going on, and look, Graham's been in, knocked a load of stuff around, sorted a load of stuff out, got the baselining project going, loads of stuff going. And good luck to him. You know, that's a commercial decision, and off he goes. Emily's got a load of challenges, and good luck to her. Yeah, you can talk about the people, but actually it's irrelevant. What's actually relevant is the challenge ahead. And the whole thing with HDB is a bit of a, I mean, I think it's less of a quivering mass than it was like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. It's been through a bit of a rebirth. It's moved HQs. It's got slightly more commercial, but I still think ultimately my master plan for HDB, which is to get the ministry the hell out of it and just have a couple of statutory roles it does, like market intelligence gathering and collecting of the levy. That's a legal bit. But as soon as the levy drops into the bank account of the particular sector, be it red meat or cereals or whatever, then it's a completely commercial decision by the levy payers what they do with it. And there's no interference from government, because this is part of the problem. It's like working for the council half the time, isn't it? And it's so frustrating for all the people that are involved. It's frustrating for people that want to get on and do amazing things. It does hold back. I think it holds back because it allows people just to spin so many plates they get out of control. They've got less, they're spinning less plates now than they were, but it has got to resharpen. And look, this is another opportunity to resharpen and get tighter, get more commercial, get with the program. Look at what your competitors are doing across the water, and they're absolutely obliterating it in terms of what they do commercially and how they hit the ground running and how they benefit their producers. And that is where we need to be.
It has been a rocky few years for the AHDB, especially rebuilding itself after potato growers voted to disband the AHDB potato sector body. Louise, only a few years too since AHDB cereals and oilseeds chairman Tom Clark, Cambridgeshire farmer, suggested the AHDB was facing an existential crisis, a life or death, a near-death experience. Do you think we're out of the woods yet?
No, I don't think we are entirely out of the woods. If we're just talking about cereals and oilseeds, personally, no, I don't think it's completely out of the woods yet. But there has been good progress made, and more stuff is being done. You know, one of the really big challenges they had was that the research budget was just not there. So that work wasn't happening. So difficult to keep talking to your the levy pairs about the work that's being done when it's not happening. So but the things are picking up again now. That's the important thing, isn't it? So and now we've just got to just accelerate, I think, really, because cereals and oilseeds is slightly lonely when you look. The other three sectors are all livestock related. So I think it'd be really good if she focused a bit of her attention on cereals and oilseeds, as well as everything else that she's going to have to do.
And that's it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We do thank you for listening and hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. Please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and if you really like what you hear, please do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with all the latest news, views and analysis of all the big stories affecting UK agriculture. But for now, I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening.